Breaking news here, folks. I've analyzed the continuing resolution just enacted by Congress and signed by President Trump. And boy, oh boy, I don't think the anti-gunners are going to like this. And if you like the ATF, you're probably not going to like what just happened in Washington, D.C. with President Trump and the Congress. And I'm not even sure a lot of people understand what's just occurred. Let's break it down when we come back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Box of Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the winner of the top voice of the Second Amendment in America at the 2025 Gundies Awards. Thank you for your support, all of you out there that voted for me. I do appreciate it. Okay, folks, so we're going to get a little geeky here, but you're going to like the outcome, and that is we're going to talk about the continuing resolution, which is this ongoing sort of budget bill that was just passed by the Congress and signed into law by President Trump. This has the potential and may well be, and is trending as I see it, to be devastating to the ATF. What do I mean by that? Of course, there are certain things that we need the ATF to do on the regulatory side in terms of issuing FFLs, handling some of those issues associated with inspections and some of the rules that keep the gun industry going, as well as dealing with the tax stamps associated with like NFA items. But beyond that, we really don't need the ATF for much of anything. But let's talk about how this all breaks down. To begin with, there was a budget issue going on, if you may recall, before President Trump became president. There was a debate about what should occur, and they continued the government going for a few additional months. Then what happened is President Trump was sworn into office, and then the question is, what are we going to do about continuing the government funding for the rest of the calendar year, for the rest of the budget year through September 2025? After back and forth, agreement was essentially achieved by the Republicans, and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, enacted this and passed this through. Now, here's the key part. This is what's known as a continuing resolution, and what means is that you already have an existing budget. Now, listen carefully. You have an existing federal budget that funds the federal government. It breaks down into a lot of details. It says, for example, you're going to have money for the veterans. You're going to have money for the ATF. You're going to have money for the prisons. You're going to have money for the EPA. And then within each of those agency budgets, it breaks it down. So, for example, in the defense budget, there may be money allocated to the Air Force, a certain different amount of money allocated to the Army, a different amount of money allocated to the Navy, and so on and so on. You see, it's specified, it's broken down by where the money is specifically going to go, not just by like cabinet, agency like EPA, but within the EPA, Congress will allocate money to the different divisions, the departments and agencies within the overall EPA, or within the overall Department of Defense, or within the overall Department of Justice. Now, what Donald Trump did here with Elon Musk's help, I'm sure, is really messed up the Democrats big time, including those that support the ATF. And what happened here is this: that the traditional way you do a continuing resolution in Washington, D.C. is you have a budget that has those specific items that I've just articulated. And then what you do is you say, okay, we're going to do a very short bill that's just a few pages long, and all it's going to say is we're going to continue funding the budget that we just passed several months ago, with all those details and all those breakdowns. We're going to continue all of those items in that detailed budget for another 3, 6, 9 months. That's what's going to happen. So you continue the budget as it was written and passed previously. So if you were going to do a traditional continuing resolution in the normal course, what Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the Republicans in Washington could have done or should have done, we're going to explain the way it would usually work, is they would pass a continuing resolution that says all those line items, all those specific items that were previously discussed in the prior budget that was enacted, we're going to continue those for another 6 months at the current rate of funding, or you might say at the current rate of funding plus an increase of 2 or 3%, whatever it is. That's what you would traditionally do in Washington. But what just happened was devastating to the Democrats. And the Democrats know it, but a lot of people don't fully appreciate it. Specifically, what happened was, rather than doing a continuing resolution that says we're going to continue all the line item budget items, all the details within all the agencies in the same way that it's been continuing, or it was enacted several months ago, they changed the rules of the road. The Republicans and Donald Trump, probably with the help of Elon Musk, made a big, great change, devastating to the ATF and other anti-Trump or groups as I see it. What exactly happened? Instead of continuing all the programs at their existing rate with a little bit of bump up, they wrote the continuing resolution differently this time. Specifically, what they said is we're going to get really block sums of money or lump sums of money to each of the cabinet agencies, to each of the cabinet departments, with some minor exceptions that are not relevant here. So, for example, rather than saying, here's a line item detailed budget for the Environmental Protection Agency, here's a line item detailed budget for the Department of Defense with money for prisons, with money for the Marshal Service, with money for the FBI, with money for the ATF. You see what I'm saying? They didn't do that. They did not do that with this continuing resolution. Instead, they just said, as a general matter, there's a few exceptions that are not important, but as a general matter, what they said is, we're going to give you a $45 billion amount of money, for example, to the Department of Justice. And we're going to give $40 million to the Department of Homeland Security, whatever it is. You see, they simply gave a block grant, a block amount of money, a set of money that was given to these departments without breaking down and specifying where the money needed to go. Do you hear what I just said? That means that the Department of Justice got a big chunk of money from Congress, if you will, which means from the taxpayer, and obviously we don't need to get into that for this video, but we're on the same page, I'm sure, but I'm just walking through the process, not the good and the bad of this. But the reality is the Department of Justice, among all the agencies, among all the departments, got a big sum of money. Here's the key. As to how that money gets spent within the Department of Justice, or how that money gets spent within the Environmental Protection Agency, or how that big chunk of change gets spent within the Food and Drug Administration, whatever. Guess what? Congress left that up to the decision-making authority of the executive branch, which includes President Trump, and when it comes to the Department of Justice, Attorney General Pam Bondi. And why is that so important? Think about this. If I give your home family $100,000, I'm like, here's $100,000. Spend it any way you want. You can take that money, you can add on to your home, you can buy a car, you can buy a home, some places, I guess, or put down a down payment. You see, you can give it to the kids. I'm just giving you $100,000 for your house, for your family. I'm not giving you a budget that says, here's $100,000. You got to spend $10,000 on little Jimmy and $10,000 on grandma and $10,000 on the kitchen. You see what I'm saying? This is devastating to the ATF. Why? Because what's happened here is that Pam Bondi, in charge of the Department of Justice, has the authority to spend the money allocated to the Department of Justice as she sees fit, which means she can spend the money where she wants to spend the money, and she can choose not to spend the money where she doesn't want to spend the money. Which means that if she chooses to financially starve the ATF, that's within her right now. She can say, I'm going to give all the money I got, for example, just hypothetically speaking, to the prisons, to the FBI, to the Marshal Service. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to take, $5,000 and I'm going to allocate that to the ATF. See what I'm saying? Pam Bondi now has the position and is in the position to move resources away from the ATF because Congress did not tell her in the continuing resolution budget that she must spend X dollars on the ATF. Now, you may be, oh, that's an interesting theory, Mark. So why are you telling me all this? Great theory. Because I think it's happening. And why do I say that? Do you know how a lot of people were attacking me for defending Pam Bondi and Donald Trump when that Second Amendment executive order came out and they were saying nothing was happening fast enough? And I kept telling y'all, don't buy into that hooey. You watch. Let's talk about sequencing for a moment. That continuing resolution was a close run thing. It was a very close, vote in the House, because we the Republicans only have a few vote lead in the House. So it was a very close run thing, but it got through. And then, of course, the question was Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate going to filibuster the bill and thereby shut down government? Because to get this bill passed, it had to get through a filibuster, and the Democrats could have filibustered it, meaning the Republicans needed 60 votes, but the Democrats chose not to do it, and then the Senate passed it. That happened first. And as this was going on, remember, there was a lot of people in the Second Amendment community were saying, oh no, Pam Boendi's not doing enough. She's just being quiet. Nothing's happening. This is crazy talk. What's going on? Why doesn't she love the Second Amendment? You get the point. What was going on, folks, as I see it, was that the first step was to get the continuing resolution through that gave all the cabinet heads of these departments, including Pam Boendi as the head of the Department of Justice, the legal budgetary authority to starve, in this case, the ATF. Okay? Now, you may be also saying to me, hey, Mark, where's the proof of the pudding? Okay, again, great theory. But we understand. Okay, so we understand. The continuing resolution had to get through Congress. Trump had to sign it. That was a big deal. And Pam Boendi delayed a couple days to make some decisions on the budget and all these other things. And yeah, we know she's busy fighting those D.C. judges in D.C. because she's overall responsible for all those litigations involving deportations and the green card holders getting kicked out of the country and so on and so on. And we know that she got a couple extra days to deal with that executive order. But come on, Mark, what's really going on here? Well, let me tell you this. Pam Boendi, after what I just said, the passage of the continuing resolution, the passage of the continuing resolution, the effective ability to starve the ATF with the way the budget was written in this continuing resolution, and then what happened next? The restoration of rights interim rule came out. Now, you may have seen discussions of this. This is basically restarting up the process in the Department of Justice for restoring people's rights, people who have been convicted of a DUI in Massachusetts 30 years ago with no victims and no nothing, and they've lost their right to keep and bear arms for the rest of their lives because that DUI is defined as a felony under federal law. People like Brian Range, who, committed welfare fraud 40 years ago and had never heard of fly, somehow have lost their right to keep and bear arms for life. You get the point. Now, she issued this interim rule saying she wants to hear comments. Why? Listen carefully, folks. You're going to love this. Because she says she's going to take responsibility away from the ATF for restoring the rights of people that have lost their right to keep and bear arms. Hear what I just said? As soon as all this went down, the CR was passed, the 30-day window came and went with Pam Boendi and dealing with the Second Amendment. Donald Trump goes to the Department of Justice. He reminds everyone that they're going to be laser focused on violent criminals, cartels and gang members, which means by definition not gun owners. Not law-abiding gun owners. If you're going after the gangbangers, you're not going after Joe Blow in Wisconsin for having something illegal in the closet that never hasn't seen the light of day in 20 years. You're not doing that malum prohibitum crime stuff that they used to do under Biden. No, what happened is they did this rule that says the restoration of rights rule is being taken away. The authority to act on that is being taken away from the ATF. Oh, see what just happened here? The rule, the regulation that's just been promulgated by Pam Boendi specifically says that the authority for restoring the rights of people, for restoring the Second Amendment rights of people, is no longer to be handled by the ATF. They're taking that authority away from the ATF. Why? Because historically, the ATF, Congress has said to the ATF, you don't have the authority to do this because you even have statutory authority, but we're not going to give you any money to do so. Pam Boendi has just pulled the authority away from the ATF because it was allocated to the ATF by regulation. It is coming away from the ATF also by regulation, and it is being given to the Department of Justice generally. See what just happened there? The authority that was given to the ATF to do restoration of rights has now been pulled away from the ATF and given to the DOJ generally. Okay? The budget did not specify specific money for the ATF. It was pulled away from the ATF and given to the Department of Justice generally. This is consistent with what I've been talking about and not enough people are focused on, and that's this. As soon as Trump came into office, the law enforcement arm, the police arm, the guys with the guns and the power to arrest that work for the ATF were pulled out of the ATF and reassigned to immigration enforcement. See what's just going on here, folks? You take away the line item budget for from the ATF and give it the money to DOJ generally to spend as they see fit or not spend as they see fit. You take away the authority of the ATF to deal with restorations of right and give it to the DOJ generally. You take the ATF's law enforcement agents, the guys with the power to arrest, the guys that do Waco, the guys that do Ruby Ridge, you take those guys, the police, if you will, out of the ATF and reassign them to non-gun related issues, including immigration. See what's going on here, folks? The ATF is in the process of dwindling and shrinking. And then, last but not least, you fire, which is what happened. Trump and Pam Bondi fired the pardon attorney who refused to give the Second Amendment rights back to Mel Gibson. According to reports, she's gone because she would not respect the Second Amendment. And then what do you do next? You fire, the chief lawyer for the ATF and get rid of her because she's supporting gun control, according to reports. And you put into that slot a Second Amendment legal scholar from George Mason, Rob Leiter, Professor Leiter, who you've seen Professor Leiter and I on panels and the like before involving the Second Amendment, who's good on the Second Amendment, written some very pro-Second Amendment stuff. You put Professor Leiter in charge of the ATF's legal department as chief counsel. See the trend lines, folks? You're taking away authority from the ATF. You're taking away the law enforcement agencies from the ATF, the agents from the ATF. You're putting yourself into a position where you can starve the ATF money. You fire the pardon attorney that doesn't like gun rights. You get rid of the counsel at ATF who doesn't like gun rights apparently. You'll put in the position there, Rob Leiter, who historically is on the record as being good on the Second Amendment. And all of this stuff is happening right now. Right now. The trend is our friend, my friends. The trend is our friend. This is good news, folks. And I think this is going to continue. And in another year or so, I'm not sure where the ATF is going to be. And don't forget, Donald Trump right now still does not have, and I think this is terrible, but he still does not have his full complement of Department of Justice attorneys, which he really needs. He does not have the Solicitor General of the United States confirmed, John Sauer. He does not have the Department of Justice's Office of Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon. She's not been confirmed. So the DOJ is not only fighting all these battles with DC judges over deportation and the deep state and DOJ and all this. At the same time, despite all this, they're still having time to set the ATF up to essentially gut it. I don't think it's going to go away forever, and I don't think we necessarily want it to go away forever. I think that's a debatable proposition because you do need someone to deal with the FFLs and some of the civil regulatory things. And it may be a very small little office of the ATF. The ATF may, consist of 100 people or 50 people as opposed to what it is now. But it's pretty clear, folks, that the ATF is shrinking in its role in American life. It may not be entirely disappearing, but the trend is our friend. And if you like the ATF, if you like what they do, you're probably getting pretty depressed now. And I suspect this may just be the beginning of your depression because I don't think the future of the ATF looks very bright. So anyway, I'm giving you the information as I see it. I'm laying this all out. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments down below. And oh, by the way, yes, I'm in a suit because I had Fox News today. So you're probably going to see me in a suit a bunch now that I'm back in town, because a lot of Fox News commitments coming up with all these legal cases and the Supreme Court and everything else. All right, folks, so there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you follow me at X at 4Boxes Diner. And don't forget to subscribe both on YouTube and Rumble. And I'll talk to you again soon, very, very soon, I hope, here at the 4Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.